A simple woman was called a homeless liar until she signed the check for the entire building. The rain fell in relentless sheets, hammering the cracked sidewalks of downtown Ashwood. Beneath the flickering neon glow of a pawn shop sign, Ellen Harper stood, her thin frame shivering under a threadbare coat. Her graying hair clung to her face, and her boots, once sturdy, now let in water with every step. To the passers-by, she was invisible, a ghost in a city that worshipped wealth and ignored suffering. But Ellen was no ghost. She was a woman with a story, one that would soon turn this city upside down. Ellen clutched a tattered canvas bag, her only possession, as she shuffled toward the gleaming glass tower known as Pinnacle Heights. The building was a monument to opulence, its penthouses home to Ashwood's elite, bankers, tech moguls, and influencers who flaunted their wealth on social media. To Ellen, it was something else entirely, a promise kept, a secret buried, and a stage for the reckoning she'd waited decades to deliver. Inside the lobby, the air was warm and scented with lavender. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and a concierge named Marcus, dressed in a crisp navy suit, eyed Ellen with suspicion. Her soaked coat dripped onto the pristine floor, and her worn-out sneakers squeaked with every step. Marcus's lip curled. "Ma'am, this is private property. You can't be here." Ellen's voice was soft but steady, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "I'm here to see Mr. Caldwell. He's expecting me." Marcus scoffed, glancing at the security guard by the elevators. "Mr. Caldwell? The owner of Pinnacle Heights? Lady, you must be lost. Or delusional." He leaned closer, his voice dripping with condescension. "Why don't you head back to wherever you belong?" The guard, a burly man named Tony, stepped forward, his hand resting on his radio. "Let's not make this difficult," he said, his tone more bored than threatening. A small crowd of residents, designer-clad women and men in tailored suits, gathered near the lounge area, whispering and smirking. To them, Ellen was a spectacle, a filthy intruder in their perfect world. Ellen didn't budge. She reached in her bag, pulling out a crumpled envelope. "Call him," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Tell him Ellen Harper is here." Marcus rolled his eyes, but humored her, picking up the phone. He spoke in a low voice, then froze, his eyes widening. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." He hung up, staring at Ellen as if she'd grown wings. "Mr. Caldwell says to send you up. Penthouse floor." The crowd fell silent. Tony's hand dropped from his radio. Ellen gave a small nod and walked toward the elevators, her wet shoes leaving a trail on the marble. The doors closed, and the whispers erupted into a frenzy. Ellen's life hadn't always been this way. 30 years ago, she'd been a young woman with dreams as big as the city itself. Born in a small Ohio town, she'd come to Ashwood with a scholarship to a prestigious university, her heart set on becoming an architect. She was brilliant, her professor said, with a knack for designing buildings that felt alive, structures that told stories. But life has a way of breaking even the brightest spirits. Her senior year, Ellen met Daniel Caldwell, a charming business major with a smile that could sell ice to a snowman. They fell in love, or so she thought. Daniel promised her the world, marriage, a partnership, a future where they'd build empires together. But when Ellen got pregnant, everything changed. Daniel's wealthy family saw her as a liability, a small-town girl with no pedigree. They pressured him to end it, and he did, leaving Ellen with nothing but a broken heart and a baby on the way. She named her daughter Lily. For a while, Ellen fought to keep going, working odd jobs while raising her child. But the city was cruel, and poverty tightened its grip. When Lily was 5, a car accident stole her away, leaving Ellen shattered. Grief consumed her, and the world turned its back. She lost her apartment, her savings, everything. For years, she drifted, surviving on the streets, her dreams buried under layers of pain. But Ellen was no ordinary woman. Even in her darkest moments, she carried a spark, a quiet, unyielding strength. And she had a secret, one she'd guarded for decades, waiting for the right moment to unleash it. The penthouse was a world unto itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Ashwood skyline, the city lights glittering like a sea of stars. Daniel Caldwell stood by a sleek bar, pouring amber liquid into a crystal glass. He was older now, his hair silver, but his charisma hadn't faded. He wore a tailored suit, every inch the mogul who owned half the city's real estate. "Ellen," he said, his voice smooth but guarded. "You look different." She smiled faintly, setting her dripping bag on the polished floor. "You look exactly the same." He gestured to a leather sofa. "Sit. Let's talk." Ellen remained standing. "I'm not here to talk, Daniel. I'm here to collect." His smile faltered. "Collect? After all these years?" "Ellen, I don't know what you think." "Don't." She cut him off, her voice sharp. "You know exactly why I'm here. The contract. The one you signed 30 years ago." Daniel's face tightened. He set down his glass, his movements deliberate. "That was a lifetime ago. A piece of paper. It's worthless now." Ellen reached in her bag and pulled out the envelope, now worn but intact. She slid out a document, its edges yellowed, but the text clear. "You thought I'd lose it, didn't you? Or that I'd die out there, and your secret would stay buried. But I kept it. Every word." Daniel's eyes flicked to the paper, and for the first time, fear crept into his expression. 30 years ago, when he'd been a cocky young man, he'd made a deal with Ellen. She'd designed a building, his first major project, the one that launched his empire. In exchange, he promised her a 50% stake in the property. It was a handshake deal, formalized in a contract he assumed she'd never enforce. After all, who would believe a penniless woman over a titan like him? The building was Pinnacle Heights. The next morning, Ashwood buzzed with rumors. Ellen Harper, the homeless liar, had been seen leaving Pinnacle Heights in a chauffeured car. Social media exploded with speculation. Was she a con artist? A long-lost heiress? The concierge, Marcus, was grilled by residents, but he could only stammer that Mr. Caldwell had given strict orders. No one was to speak of Ellen. Meanwhile, Ellen sat in a law office across town, her wet coat replaced by a borrowed blazer. Her attorney, a sharp young woman named Rachel, laid out the case. The contract was ironclad, signed, and notarized. Pinnacle Heights, worth over $500 million, was half hers. Daniel's lawyers tried to fight it, claiming coercion, fraud, even mental instability. But the evidence was undeniable. Ellen's designs, her signatures, her story, they all checked out. The courtroom showdown was the talk of the city. Daniel took the stand, his charm dialed to 11, painting Ellen as a desperate woman chasing a fantasy. But Ellen's testimony was a masterclass in quiet power. She spoke of her love for architecture, her betrayal, her daughter's death, and the decades she'd spent surviving. She didn't raise her voice, didn't shed a tear, but every word landed like a hammer. The jury was spellbound when the judge ruled in her favor. The courtroom gasped. Ellen Harper, the woman they'd called a liar, was now one of the richest people in Ashwood. But the real twist was yet to come. Daniel's empire began to crumble. Investors pulled out, his reputation tarnished by the scandal. Desperate to save face, he invited Ellen to a public meeting at Pinnacle Heights, promising to make things right. The media swarmed, cameras flashing as Ellen stepped into the lobby once more. This time, she wore a simple but elegant dress, her hair neatly pulled back. The crowd parted, their whispers now tinged with awe. Daniel stood at a podium, his smile strained. "Ellen and I have reached an agreement," he announced. "I'm buying out her share of Pinnacle Heights for a fair price." The room waited for Ellen's response. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the faces. Marcus, Tony, the residents who'd mocked her. Then she spoke, her voice clear and unwavering. "I'm not selling." The crowd froze. Daniel's face went pale. Ellen continued, "This building is mine. Not just half of it, all of it. I've already arranged to purchase your share, Daniel. The paperwork is done." A murmur rippled through the room. Daniel stammered, "That's impossible." "You don't have." "I do," Ellen said, pulling a check from her purse. She signed it with a flourish and handed it to Daniel's lawyer. The amount was staggering, enough to buy out his entire stake. The room erupted in chaos, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Daniel's empire was no longer his. Pinnacle Heights belonged to Ellen Harper. The twist no one saw coming was how Ellen used her newfound power. She didn't move into the penthouse or flaunt her wealth. Instead, she turned Pinnacle Heights into a beacon of hope. The lower floors became affordable housing for the city's homeless. The middle floors housed job training programs, art studios, and community spaces. The penthouses remained, but their profits funded scholarships for kids like Lily, who'd never had a chance. Ellen's story spread like wildfire. She became a symbol of resilience, proof that the underdog could win. But she remained humble, often seen walking the streets in her old coat, talking to the people she'd once lived among. When asked why she didn't embrace her wealth, she'd smile and say, "Money doesn't make you rich. Purpose does." One evening, as the sun set over Ashwood, Ellen stood on the roof of Pinnacle Heights, looking out at the city she'd conquered. The wind carried the scent of rain, and for a moment, she closed her eyes, remembering Lily's laughter, Daniel's betrayal, and the long, lonely years that had led her here. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a force. The world would never forget Ellen Harper, and neither would Ashwood. Hey, if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration. Subscribe for more stories that remind us never to judge a book by its cover. What's your favorite twist in Ellen's journey? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.